Hello, everyone, and welcome to Madden Benz Unfiltered. Mark Madden and Tim Benz with you. And Mark, these citizens are angry. I don't know what kind of feedback you're getting, but mine is over-the-top reactionary, and frankly, I'm all here for it after what happened with the Steelers at Acrisure Stadium against Arizona yesterday.
This might be a time when the Steelers' failings stop hiding in plain sight. That's the theme of a column I just submitted to the Trib, Tim. That Kenny Pickett stinks and has for quite some time, but it's been ignored. Mike Tomlin hasn't been a good coach since Bill Cowher's players all left the team, and more important, all the leaders he left behind moved on. And now people are starting to finally catch on to something that I think has been obvious in both cases for a long time, especially with Tomlin. The Steelers should consider moving on at both coach and quarterback at the end of this season, but they simply won't. They'll let it stay broken. That's how bad yesterday's loss was.
Yeah, I think that the Steelers, if they were to lose out and go 0-17 next year, Art Rooney II still wouldn't fire Mike Tomlin. You and I saw the same post from our friend who used to work here, Josh Yohe. He covers hockey for The Athletic. He said he was watching ESPN, and one of the ESPN anchors still referenced Tomlin as a Coach of the Year candidate after that debacle. Stan Verrett, that's who it was, yeah. I didn't see that live. I just went off of what Josh said, but that's farcical. It's just an indication of how the national media refuses to acknowledge any responsibility that Tomlin has for losses like these, and this is the classic Tomlin, stub your toe, out of nowhere. How did it happen? Steelers loss. And shame on me because I kind of thought the Steelers were able to avoid these losses this year because they did all of last year. They had all this season, but this is as bad of one as I can remember at home under Tomlin.
Well, someday, Tim, we'll have a real frank discussion as to why the drum keeps getting beaten for Tomlin no matter what, no matter how much his good teams underachieve, although this isn't a good team. On second thought, maybe we won't ever have that discussion. But yeah, Mark Cavalli from The Athletic just posted on Twitter that the Steelers have zero mental toughness, that mistakes keep snowballing. And I think we saw that yesterday in the loss to Arizona. I think a typical Steelers failing, just one of their mega failings they have on occasion, is not scoring from the one, and then Arizona goes 99 yards in 15 plays to score right before halftime. That is the essence of what the Steelers have become. When they fail big. Now, some are going to say, and it has to be acknowledged, they're 7-5. How are they 7-5? Well, that's because there are so many bad teams in the NFL that when they play, somebody's got to win. That's how the Steelers are 7-5. And hey, they'll probably beat New England on Thursday, although New England, Tim, you got to love them. 39 points total in their last 3 games. They've lost by a cumulative 26-13. That final score Thursday could be 3-2.
If there is a way for one of them to score 1, it might be 3-1. It might be 1-0. We're not going to see any offense on Thursday night because for as bad as these teams have been, you throw injury on top of it, you throw short work week on top of it, and it's going to be even more ugly and sloppy. I saw Mark yesterday. We talked about this in the podcast. The first over-under came out. It was at 32.5. It's gone down. It's already gone down half a point. People are looking at 32.5 and laughing at the prospect of these two teams getting to that number.
Tim, you know where I expect that over-under could easily settle in at?
5. I think you know.
Maybe.
No way. 5, unlikely. They're not getting to 5. 5, no way.
It's just a bad scene with the Steelers. But like I said, it's been hiding in plain sight. It's been this way for some time. They just beat enough bad teams, and people want so badly to believe in Kenny Pickett, Tim. Like you mentioned the Yohe tweet. His failings are grotesque and undeniable. But you know what the main debate's going to be with lesser sports talk this week? Who should play quarterback, Mitch or Mason? It doesn't matter. Even when Kenny's available, it doesn't matter. There's not a good choice at quarterback, and that's only a fraction of the problems anyway. Leadership's a problem too, Tim. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I just don't think they have anybody to pull them through the tough times like they used to. I mean,
It's not a matter of rallying or emotional support. It's just a matter of accountability. For example, the Deontay Johnson dance after a touchdown that pulled them within 14 in a hopeless cause. Ain't nobody going to say nothing to him. Not coach, not leader. Cam Hayward's a blah, blah, blah guy. I used to think he was a good leader. He ain't nothing. There's no accountability in that locker room. You got TJ Watt. The NFL has it out against me. Quit whining and do a better job. That defense had no sacks yesterday, no takeaways. It was a big part of the problem, too.
When you talk about the leadership angle, one thing that I think gets in the way of all that is they are so inclined to just assume that everything is the media's fault or the fans' fault on social media, that they see the only path to unification as an alliance against the outside. So they always side with those.
They ain't that smart. Come on.
Well, no, I think I don't think it's that complicated.
Babies who can't look in the mirror and admit they suck.
I just think they look at it as everybody's against us. So if everybody's against us, we're still on the same side. So we got to support Deontay. We got to support Pickens. We got to support Najee when anybody's critical of him. But
if that's what they think, then it shows what morons they are. I will say this, Tim. I'm against them. They don't have to like imagine that. I'm against them. They stink. They get away with it. It hides in plain sight. I am against them.
I want to go back to what you said about the quarterback thing, too, because that struck me in watching that game. Maybe it was one of the two weather delays where it really slapped me in the face. It's like watching Trubisky out there. This is the first guy that they went to. Like, this was their plan A before they got Pickett. And
but the offense didn't look no different, did it?
No, it's just as bad.
Yeah, so, I mean, Pickett ain't the guy. The sooner they conclude that and get ready to move on, the better. Kenny will be in the XFL or the USFL or arena ball in no time. Him and his small hands orchestra.
Do they use the smaller ball in the UFL? It's the UFL now, right? After they merged. And our Maulers. Our Maulers got contracted again. This time they lasted 2 seasons, 2 full seasons.
I can't wait to not watch it.
Going back to the game itself and that drive, I wanted to talk about the defense too, because, they had stopped Arizona on the first 4 third down conversions. Then they allowed 5 in a row on the 99-yard drive. And I felt like at that point it changed and it was over. And Mark, there were 2 players. Jaylen Warren admitted that they didn't take him as seriously as they should have. And Minka Fitzpatrick, in a more specific moment of self-reflection, said, we didn't give the tight end the credit he deserved, and the tight end killed him. And you know who else killed him is James Conner. James Conner ran all over him because the Steelers' defense allowed the Cardinals to remember that Conner existed. He had not been used at all in the 2 weeks since he came back from injury. And because they couldn't stop him a little bit, the Cardinals used him a lot, and he had a great return day against Pittsburgh.
Yeah, that tight end, McBride, they didn't cover him for how long? Well, they did, but with linebackers. And by the time, they figured it out, he had 6 catches in the first half. That's not exactly they didn't adjust, is a nice way to put it. They're idiots is a more accurate way to put it. I mean, they kept throwing the ball to the same guy over and over again, and they didn't adjust. Not only did they allow 5 consecutive third down conversions, Tim, they did it against Arizona. That's the one thing that nobody's losing sight of, but I want to emphasize it even more. That's one of the worst teams in football, and they were making fun of the Steelers in their locker room after. Did you see that?
Yeah.
I bet that kid is in his crib saying, what, it's my fault? I mean, they're laughing at the Steelers, the Arizona Cardinals. And you know what? They had every right to. They earned it.
Yeah, it was very similar to that loss against Jacksonville in the playoffs where they were I was in the Jacksonville locker room that day, openly mocking the Steelers for everybody to hear. And it just shows you how little has changed in 6 years since then.
And it ain't going to change. Not until you get a new coach, but they ain't never going to get a new coach, like you said. I've never talked, written, or read and listened to material about a 7-5 team that was this pessimistic. And you know why? Because they stink. They're 7-5, but they stink. And it's weird that it took so long for people to figure this out. And now that they have, right now they're still in a playoff spot.
I think
they probably will still make the playoffs.
Now I'm starting to wonder because they are still the 4 seed, yes, but I see what Indianapolis is doing. Now I feel like they can't beat the Colts, even if they do beat the Patriots. And if that's going to happen, are they really going to beat either Seattle and that, display that we saw on Thursday night? They were part of a game that had real offense. Are they really going to beat Seattle and Baltimore when it counts? Maybe that's their hope, Mark, is that the Baltimore game doesn't count and they go against their backups.
Well, okay, I think they're going to lose to Indianapolis now, and that'll be a direct blow to their playoff hopes because the Colts are kind of coming on, right?
Yes.
So
New England, if they do beat New England,
Seattle will probably have something to play for then, correct?
Yes, yeah.
There's 7 losses right there, and I can't count on any wins after yesterday. So yeah, it could go pear-shaped for sure. Maybe it's well on its way, even more so than we realize.
Mark, how about the Penguins and their power play? You made the proclamation on the podcast that the power play is so bad, if nothing else, it'll single-handedly keep the Penguins out of the playoffs.
Yeah, I predicted that. They'll miss the playoffs because of the power play. And now they think they're adjusting with Letang up top, Carlson on the left half wall. What's it say about how bad this Penguins power play is that they're taking the best point man of his generation, moving him to a different spot because they're so bad it seems like a good idea?
Yeah, and you know what? Correct me if I'm wrong on this, and I might not have the stat exactly right, but as I recall, one of the big talking points as to why it was so great that they got Carlson is that on the power play, he led the NHL last year in successful passes from the point to the slot, like the high slot, feeding the high slot. And the problem is they don't use anybody in that bumper position in a true way so that when he feeds
nobody knows how, Tim. I mean, it's ridiculous that nobody knows how, but nobody knows how. And this is where they should have signed Vince Trocheck instead of Evgeny Malkin 2 years ago. Vince Trocheck is the best in the league at the bumper position. But he's not our Gino. Don't you know what Gino did here, fat ass? We got to keep Gino and let him play wherever he wants on the power play.
This is residue of what everybody endorsed when they decided to keep the core together. And I knew people were going to do this. They want it both ways. They wanted to keep the core together, but as the core aged and the team aged as well, they just want to blame everybody else for the failures of the team. But that's impossible to separate when the core guys get the most ice time and have the most opportunities. And we could point to the stats and say there's still a point per game here, there's still a point per game here. Okay, but when the rest of the roster is no good, you got to do even more than that then.
Well, Dubas wouldn't have kept the core together had he been here when that decision was made. Now it's too late for him. I feel very comfortable saying that.
So what does that mean for the rest of the season then? Do they?
Oh, they're screwed.
Because they're so pigeonholed. This
core is not going to make the playoffs again. Unless there's some trick up their sleeve with that power play I just don't see. Such as asking EJ, or for that matter, asking me at this point. Because there are some occasions, Tim, I forget the last time I used it, where I have a hockey player, because those are the guys I talk to, right? Say, do you think you know more about this than we do? And I will say, absolutely. And in this case, the power play, I do know more.
One thing we didn't talk about in the podcast, Mark, what do you think about Jim Leyland making the Baseball Hall of Fame?
I thought he was in already.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I mean, a couple of days ago when the hype started that he was going to get in, I realized, but, I think he's a pretty obvious choice, don't you?
I do, and in a weird way, and this probably shouldn't work this way, but because the Pirates have been so bad for so long and have failed to win a division since his absence and haven't won a playoff round still, as close as they got was the Sid Bream game, it almost makes Leyland look even better. You know what I mean? Like he got that franchise to within 1 out of the World Series, for God's sake. He has to be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, and then he went on to win the World Series with Miami, got to a World Series with Detroit.
Not very good organizations there either, too.
Right, his credentials are pretty impeccable. You're right, despite who he worked for. So, I'm all for it. Does he still smoke?
I don't know, but I did see that funny clip of Harry Carey making the rounds yesterday. Did you see that?
I didn't.
where Harry Carey is like extolling the virtues of smoking, and even went so far as to say, look, people are upset about smoking, and it's produced a great man like Jim Leyland. And he sounded just obliterated.
I've often heard Jim give credit for his managerial success to smoking. No, I'm glad he's in. Do they have a smoking room at Cooperstown, I wonder? They better.
Yeah, I would think so. I mean, it's baseball after all. That'd probably be the most packed room in the house, to be honest with you.
Yeah, so no, I'm glad he made it. I think it's very deserving. The only gripe I ever had with Leyland was when he went out there with the microphone and said he would stay in Pittsburgh forever, and he was gone within a month.
Yeah, then right. And the other clip that was circulating was the 1994 clip, at the All-Star game when everybody pretty much knew it was over for baseball, over for him, over for the Pirates. And, he was sort of the symbol of fighting the good fight, but that fight has not yet since been won.
Don't get me wrong. I don't blame Leyland for having left, and certainly he proved that it was the right move. I just didn't like the showbiz, I'm going to stay, I love you people thing beforehand.
Last thing, Mark, we talked about this a bit on the podcast, but one specific angle we didn't get into was with the whole college football playoff thing. If you're Florida State, is your bigger gripe against Alabama or Texas?
My bigger gripe's with the committee.
No, I know, but I'm saying like the committee is if you're Florida State, are you more upset that Alabama got it in front of you or Texas?
Well, the automatic pick should have been the three undefeated conference winners.
Okay, so you're not drawing a line between the two then?
Are you asking me who should have got in between Texas and Alabama?
If Florida State was the fourth.
Florida State obviously should have got in.
Yeah, all right.
Okay, Texas beat Alabama, so there you go.
Okay.
But the system's designed to finagle on behalf of bigger brands, and Alabama and the SEC are a bigger brand.
Yeah, and I that's what I would say as well. If you're one that thinks that Florida State should be in, then it's probably Alabama that goes out. But God forbid we don't have an SEC team in there.
Any playoff should be devoid of do-overs. And now with 12 teams, next year they're adding even more do-overs. If you don't win your conference, you should not be in. Tim, correct me if I'm wrong, because I hate college football and follow it very peripherally because of discussions like this. The Pac-12 is going away, right?
Eventually, yeah.
I thought next year it's gone.
Well, it might be the last year for a football championship game, yes.
So after next year, it's going to be a Power Four, right?
I think so, yeah.
Why don't you just have the 4 Power Four conference winners play at that point in a playoff?
I think part of that is the group of 5, and now I don't know what becomes
the group of 5. Let them have their own playoff.
Well, I think a lot of other conferences should do that. I think
my point is there shouldn't be do-overs. If you don't win your conference, you should not be in a national championship playoff. There should be an exact way to win the national championship that's precise, concise. Everybody knows it before the season starts, and college football's never had that. It's the only major sport, Tim, where you don't know what you have to do to win the championship.
Let's get to some posts. This comes from Eric. It's absolutely anger-inducing and inexcusable that this team refuses to change its power play strategy. How can they justify this? So much failure to appease Geno. I wonder if EK is questioning his decision to come here.
I don't think EK is questioning that yet, and I'm not sure that – well, he could have gone to Carolina, I guess, but he hates Brent Burns, and vice versa. Yeah, it's being done to appease Geno. Sid should be on the right half wall. There's no doubt that – and Sid acquiesces, and maybe shame on him, too.
Billy says this happened in the 80s with the great Emperor Chuck Noll, with a K. They wouldn't change anything, and it snowballed into bad teams. Actually, to be honest with you, Noll didn't go this long without a win in the postseason. For as bad as those teams got, he at least had one, or he broke up each stretch with at least one postseason victory.
The problem with the latter stages of this Tomlin era is that the teams aren't that bad. Well, they are now because the quarterback. But when they had Bell, Brown, etc., they underachieved. And I know people laugh at me when I say this, but I think the culture facilitated them underachieving. I don't think you win with guys like that. I said it the minute that Bell and Brown took prominent roles with the Steelers hierarchy.
Dave says Coach T should definitely be on the hot seat now after that loss. Well, he won't be. And honestly, even if the national media criticism turned up against Tomlin, I
The
don't think.
national media will never criticize.
Well, yeah, and you know where that
Ever.
You want to see some evidence of that. Remember, the national media did get all over Matt Canada. And Art Rooney II, either signaled for a move or signed off on a move to fire him, depending on who you want to believe.
Tim, a lot of things can hide in plain sight.
Yes, and most obviously with this situation.
Yeah.
Pete says 10-6.
I mean, what you're going to get next from the national media is they got to get this guy a better quarterback. You're wasting a great coach.
Even though he was the coach for Ben Roethlisberger over the last, 10 years of his career, and nothing.
Even though he was the coach that nearly climaxed when they got Kenny Pickett because he wanted him so bad.
Pete says 10-6 is a dream now. It is because they play 17 games, but I get your point. And as far as getting 3 more wins, conceivably it could happen because you could beat New England, you could beat Cincy, and who's left? Who's the other one that I'm forgetting about? Indianapolis. I mean, theoretically you could. But
well, you know what's going to happen though? They're going to beat New England, and then the optimism will ramp right back up
because they'll get to 8. And then
the adults in this town, the citizens, they're buffaloed. Tim, this town is so stupid. They think playing Renegade is a strategy.
Yeah, it's such a strategy. Some guy named Dortch came out right after and got a huge first down after they played Renegade yesterday. I'd never even heard of that guy, and he beat Renegade. So if it's a strategy, it ain't working. Let's get to a couple more here. Michael says Tomlin is the most overrated coach in the NFL. Yeah, I can't think of anybody else who gets more praise and has done so little with it.
It would be hard for him to not be.
Good point. He could be 17-0, deserving of the praise, and still be overrated.
No. I'm talking about they could be 0-17, and the national media would still be in his corner.
Linda says Steelers came not to play. I don't know what coming not to play means, but if you thought that they got full of themselves after what happened against Cincinnati and didn't take Arizona seriously, then yeah, I think that's the case.
You know what, Tim? Let me ask you this: when did you know they were in trouble yesterday?
When did I know they were in trouble? After the 99-yard drive.
I knew it before that. I'm watching the game in the very luxurious Delta VIP Club at JFK, and when they drove down the field and once again laid up for the field goal right away, I said, same old crap, they're in trouble.
You know what, though? I would have actually gone for the field goal before the 99-yard drive.
I would have, too, because of who you're playing.
Well, not only because of who you're playing, but you've got Mitch coming in cold. You've got Herbig coming in cold for Siamalu. Everybody knew that was going to be a handoff. The only play was a handoff.
That's a good point. I'm going to go for the field goal there. I mean, all your reasoning is sound and figures in, but I'm thinking, okay, Arizona's so bad I can beat them 3 points at a time. There's not a lot of team in this league you can beat 3 points at a time. Arizona's one of them. For that matter, Tim, the Steelers are one of them.
Brad says Georgia lost to Alabama, so they can't get in ahead of them. Yeah, but I wasn't talking about...
Hold on, why not? Okay, if they're the better team, I mean, Florida State didn't get in because the committee said, we know they're not one of the 4 best teams. Well, why is one game by Alabama, one win over Georgia, indicative that they're necessarily better than Georgia? I mean, that sounds ridiculous to say, and it is ridiculous to say, but no less ridiculous than keeping the number 13, the 13-0 Power 5 champ out because their quarterback got hurt, which, by the way, Danny Cannell tweeted, totally negates the concept of football as a team game.
This one comes from Peter, says, how can a 240-pound guy not gain a yard? He's talking about Najee. Well, because the Steelers' 5 300-pounders got licked right in front of him. That was the problem.
Tim, I'm a 310-pound guy, and I couldn't gain a yard.
How about Mason Cole yesterday, too, with all those bad snaps? He had 3 of them.
Could you imagine Mason Cole and Kenny Pickett playing catch?
Well, that's Mason Cole's biggest problem is he's so thrown off by trying to snap the ball into those tiny, tiny little hands of Kenny. It screwed him up for the rest of his career.
You know what it would be like? Did you ever see the Howard Stern movie?
Yes. Oh,
remember playing catch with the Frisbee?
When he hits him in the nose?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
Russ says, another embarrassing loss under Tomlin. This is becoming an annual tradition. And it always seems to happen when it matters most, and they control their destiny for the playoffs.
We need to quit talking about this as an annual tradition, because that actually adds acceptance to it. Like, I heard that on the Steeler postgame show yesterday, driving home from the airport. Well, this is going to happen sometimes. It should never happen. You should play Arizona. Who are the other teams, Tim? Like Oakland?
Oh, they lost to the Raiders a bunch when the Raiders were terrible. 2018.
Okay. You should, when you play Arizona yesterday in a situation like that, with them having nothing to gain, the Steelers having a lot on the table, and even though you're no good, you're better than Arizona, you should play them 100 times and beat them 100 times. But we say, oh, it happens once in a while with Tomlin, which normalizes it.
Yeah, like people will look back at 2020, the COVID year, when that year you've referenced a couple times here, where they started 11-0. Remember, They lost to teams that were every bit as bad as this Arizona team. They lost to that Washington team. They lost to that Ryan Finley quarterback Bengals team.
I knew then they sucked. I said when they were 11-0, they had no hope.
2018, they had two losses like this when they were 7-2-1, and they had a 97% chance of making the playoffs. They lost to Oakland and Denver in back-to-back weeks, right around this time on the schedule.
The coach is not a good coach anymore, if he ever was.
Mark, how was Kiss?
Oh, it was great. It was great. I mean, that was one of my favorite trips I've ever made, one of my best vacations ever. I saw Kiss twice. Both shows were tremendous. Although I thought it was funny that Paul Stanley did not change his rap at all from night to night. There was no extra sentimentality at being the last two shows, because Kiss is very formulaic and repetitive. I don't mean that as an insult. That's how they are. And part of it was, too, they filmed both nights, and I think they wanted to be as close to exactly the same as possible, so when they cut the DVD together, they can take from both shows. Now, they wear the same costumes anyway, play the same set list anyway, but it was still kind of funny. There was no tears shed. I was at Motley's last show in 2015, which turned out to be their not last show, and Vince Neil cried. There was like none of that emotion, with Kiss, but that's just how Kiss is. Kiss is a brand. It's corporate. I'm not insulting. I just really understand Kiss. The shows were great. They really upped their performance level given their age. Set list was fantastic. I saw Liverpool rally from 2 goals down in the final few minutes yesterday at this great Liverpool bar in the financial district called Carragher's. Went there twice, saw 2 wins. Saw a Broadway show, Spamalot, the Monty Python musical, which was just insanely good. Saw the Knicks, saw the Rangers. It was great. Can't wait to quit my job so I can do it all the time.
So you told me that Kiss is now going to be AI Kiss?
They're avatars.
Yeah.
Like ABBA does something like that. They do shows like, is it AI? I don't know. I mean, like, I got to be honest, as much as I love Kiss, I have no intention of ever seeing it. And I bet they play shows.
You don't think they're done? One-offs, like special occasions, anniversary things, stuff like that. Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, whatever.
Well, they already made the Hall of Fame and didn't perform then.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, that's
because the Rock Hall, I think, wanted Ace and Peter, the originals, to perform, and Kiss refused.
Oh, okay.
And Ace and Peter were not there Friday or Saturday, which people criticize that, and I would have preferred it. I get it, though. I mean, the current band's the current band. They're the ones who did the farewell tour. I'm not sure it would hurt to bring them each out for one song, though.
Well, if things don't work out for AI Kiss, maybe they can just write for Sports Illustrated.
They should try the Steelers should have AI coaching. Because let me tell you what, artificial intelligence would be better than lack of intelligence.
Mark Madden is back today on his show 3 to 6. Listen to him on 105.9 The X. We'll be back for Madden Benz Unfiltered next week, and then we'll be back. We'll adjust our schedule somehow for Christmas. We haven't figured that part out, but we'll do it. And I'll be at Breakfast with Benz all week, so make sure you're reading and listening to the podcast.
By the way, Tim, it's funny. Like, Kiss is one of the few groups that gets me to sing along on the chorus. Okay, and like, did you ever hear Love Gun?
Yes.
I hit that chorus perfectly. I'm not going to try it now. Maybe I will. Love, yeah. But live in the Garden, I was great. I was great.
It's just because your kitchen doesn't echo like the shower would, Mark. You're not getting the reverb in your head the right way. That's all.
I sounded great at the Garden. I know that. So did Paul and Gene.
Mark is on today, 3-6 on 105.9 The X. Read me Breakfast with Benz this week. Have a good week, everybody.